Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing Episode 94, The Joy of Pokemon. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on their way to the next island on Lapras as usual, with Ash polishing the GS ball and Misty playing with her Togepi. But suddenly, Ash notices some waves. These waves are revealed to be caused by a tan Nurse Joy and her Chansey in their kayak, and Ash instantly commands Lapras to follow wherever they were going. Since it was going so fast, they originally thought it was a motorboat, so wherever it was going had to be somewhere important. By the time they arrived at the island where they saw the kayak dock, though, it appears to be a seemingly random island with only Nurse Joy's kayak, which she had left behind, being visible. Tracy then spots that there's also some footprints as well, with one of them belonging to a Chansey, indicating that Nurse Joy and the Chansey must have went up further ahead, since Nurse Joy obviously owned a Chansey, being a Nurse Joy. Tracy becomes determined to follow these tracks and find the Nurse Joy, and Ash and Misty follow him after Ash returns Lapras to its Pokeball. Unfortunately, the tracks lead them absolutely nowhere, aside from a random-ass bay with rocks on it, and due to there being rocks, there were now no more footprints to follow in the sand. Misty questioned if they were even following a Nurse Joy anyways, as the Nurse Joy looked different than a normal Nurse Joy. And no, she wasn't being racist, as Tracy clarified that he agreed, for the reason that this Nurse Joy seemed more muscular than the average Nurse Joy, as he proceeded to take out his tape measure to do some comparisons to how strong she looked, comparing the thickness of her biceps to the thickness of some nearby trees or some shit. He must have found that shit attractive, but he was cut off from doing this as a large-ass Magikarp then came flopping out of the nearby water and practically knocked Misty and Ash over, before landing on the rocks and proceeding to flail around uncontrollably. Misty, being the water Pokemon expert, was like, guys, we have to get it back in the water, otherwise it's gonna drown, because water-type Pokemon drown if they're not in water. Ash is like, yeah, you're right, instead of being like, yeah, no shit, like he should have been. And they try their best to get Magikarp back in the water, but since it's so big, they fail to do so. Fortunately, though, the Nurse Joy from earlier, yes, that's right, she was a Nurse Joy, shows up, and her mere presence is somehow able to calm the Magikarp down to the point where it stops flailing, and the Nurse Joy then just gives it some calcium, provided by her trusty Chansey, in order to restore some of the energy it had lost while being on land, and throws it back into the water, and it's as good as new, proceeding to blow the Nurse Joy a kiss, indicating it had fallen in love due to her affection. Damn, this Nurse Joy really had the power. It was able to calm this thing down and make it fall in love? Damn. All of this made Tracy fall in love with her as well, as he proceeded to draw a sketch of her in her sketchbook, stating that it was because he was so impressed with her skills. But come on, Tracy, we all know the real reason. The Nurse Joy compliments Tracy's drawing skills, before revealing that she was a bit different from the other Nurse Joy, as she traveled around from island to island instead of just staying on one, as she wanted to help out islands that were too small to have their own Pokemon Center, or couldn't afford to put one in. During this explanation, Ash gets embarrassed as his stomach growls, revealing that what he needed Nurse Joy's help with right now wasn't healing Pokemon, but he needed a good-ass meal. And thankfully, Nurse Joy was happy to oblige, as she led them to a Pokemon Center that she had built on this island, and made them lunch. Yes, that's right. She not only visited other Pokemon Centers, she tried her best to build a whole bunch on multiple different islands. Man, that's awesome. When Ash and the gang arrived at the Pokemon Center, they were immediately given an awesome meal by the Nurse Joy, and immediately chowed down, along with Togepi and Pikachu. While they ate, they debated on if they could potentially do what Nurse Joy did as well, wanting to help her out, as she was by herself. So, they went outside the center, to where Nurse Joy currently was, to find her examining Ash's Lapras, which she had asked for permission to examine as soon as they arrived. She thankfully clarified that Lapras was in good condition, although just a little tired, from essentially being forced to be a slave to Ash and the gang, constantly bringing them to different islands. It was fine, though. Then, Ash and the gang reveal their want to help out the Nurse Joy with any of her tasks, and she gratefully accepts, although adds that they'll have to keep up with her in her kayak, and this proves to be difficult for them to do, as they had not much experience with a kayak. Ash and Misty fall behind, but Tracy is able to eventually keep up quite well due to his sheer love for Nurse Joy. Fucking Brock 2.0. Thankfully, even Ash and Misty are eventually able to keep up the pace, and Ash and the gang all proceed to help the Nurse Joy with several of her jobs across multiple different islands, including helping a Mankey who was stuck in a tree, helping put a bandage on a Kingler, and giving an Onix a shot. On their way to the next island, though, they began to get tired from all the kayaking that they've been doing, once again, because they never fucking kayak, and as a result, they eventually lose sight of the Nurse Joy and her Chansey, because they were going so fucking fast. They are able to catch up to her kayak, but no, it's not because of something stupid like a Deus Ex Machina moment, or just plot armor, but it's because the kayak had stopped moving, and now had no one in it. It was completely empty. This obviously leads the gang to get worried, but I think Tracy was a little too worried, as he suggests that the Nurse Joy and Chansey were eaten by a Gyarados. But I don't know if that's really the case. I think the kayak would have been damaged, and it wasn't. Like, even if it didn't eat them, and just, like, tip the kayak over, the kayak would still be fucked. Determining that she probably wasn't eaten, since her body was nowhere to be found, Ash and the gang try their best to look for Nurse Joy and the Chansey around the ocean, but all they end up encountering is a Jigglypuff. At first, they're excited, because they see a pink ball in the water, and they believe that it's Chansey, but no, the Jigglypuff reveals itself, and prepares to sing, as usual, leading Ash and the gang to paddle away as fast as they could. Maybe that's all they needed to catch up, was just a motivator from Jigglypuff. The Jigglypuff gets mad, and does the same face that it does when it draws on people's faces, but there was no one left for you to draw on this time, bitch. In the seemingly endless cycle this episode of Ash and the gang riding a kayak, getting tired, stopping, and then riding again, and then stopping again, Ash and the gang decide to take a break from searching as they were getting too tired. However, they end up taking a break in the perfect spot as Chansey then surfaces to the top of the water, along with Nurse Joy. Nurse Joy clarifies that they weren't knocked out of their kayak, they had purposely left it behind, as she had spotted a cloister underwater and saw that it was sick and wanted to go help it. She originally planned to have the kayak stay right by them though, so added that the current must have dragged the kayak back to that original spot. So, she told Chansey to go back to where the kayak was to retrieve it, since she obviously didn't want to have to replace her trusty kayak. Ash and Tracy then question how Officer Jenny could physically treat Pokemon underwater, and she offers to show them as she had some more Pokemon that needed treating down in the water as well, such as a Shelder, so she goes down with them as Pikachu gets depressed that he couldn't come. When they reach the ocean floor, Nurse Joy finds a Shelder and begins to treat it just as you would on land. See, why are you guys curious as to how she did it underwater? It's clearly the same thing. Despite this, Tracy is still immensely impressed, being the simp for Nurse Joy that he is, just like Brock. Before Ash can even observe that much, he starts to drown, and to make matters worse, he gets kidnapped by a dugong who views him as a toy and wants to play with him. But thankfully, Nurse Joy is able to use her Pokemon calming skills to calm down the dugong and get it to release Ash. And she's also able to bring him to safety back at the Pokemon Center, bringing Tracy and Misty along the way. Also, in case you were curious, which I'm sure you are, Chansey did manage to retrieve the kayak. Absolutely crucial information. Due to being warmed up with a blanket and some tea, Ash eventually comes to, and Nurse Joy reminds him of what had happened with the dugong, assuring him that it was only trying to play, not trying to murder him, although it almost did. Stating how most other Officer Jennys at least didn't have to deal with the threat of people dying, Tracy asked the Nurse Joy if she would prefer to live the life of all the other Nurse Joy of simply living at one Pokemon Center, and that being your only worry, as opposed to worrying about people all over the world. Reasoning that it would be easier, since you would only have to stay in one location, and all of your potential patients would be brought to you, instead of you having to go find them. Nurse Joy then countered that she specifically wanted to help Pokemon that didn't have trainers to bring them in to a Pokemon Center all over the world, and proceeded to tell them her backstory to explain why. Essentially, one day when she was little, she found a little baby Magikarp that had washed up all by itself on the beach, and she decided to take it home and put it in her care. When it was better, she released it into the ocean, and coincidentally, one day, when she was taking a trip on a boat with all of her other Nurse Joy family members, of which there were fucking probably thousands, she fell off the boat and almost drowned, and none of the Nurse Joy fucking went in to save her. No, the Magikarp, the same one that she had released, had been able to save her from drowning. Seriously, why didn't the Nurse Joy do anything? But anyways, now understanding how the Nurse Joy's goal related to this story, since the Magikarp didn't have a trainer to send it into a Pokemon Center, Misty then questioned if the Magikarp from earlier was actually the same one that Nurse Joy had interacted with when she was a kid. Nurse Joy confirmed this, clarifying that that was why that huge-ass Magikarp had instantly gotten calm around her since it knew her for such a long time. Also stating that her constant treatment was likely a reasoning for its constant growth in size. Nurse Joy then excuses herself from the Pokemon Center, stating that she had one more job to go do for the day, but was surprised when she went out to see the warning signs of an upcoming hurricane being strong-ass fucking winds. This led Tracy to suggest that she postpone the job until after the storm, being worried for her safety, explaining the dangers of a potential hurricane, but Nurse Joy countered that the job was really urgent, as it was a group of 6 seal that could die at any minute if she didn't intervene. She added that they were babies to further entice Tracy to let her go, but Tracy still refused, not wanting Nurse Joy to get hurt. Nurse Joy simply ignored him though, and proceeded to go out into the ocean anyway, leading Tracy to follow to make sure that nothing happened, and Ash to follow as well. Misty was scared of the storm more than anybody, but she reluctantly decided to follow as well, not wanting to be left behind. Nurse Joy managed to take off first, getting an immense head start, and just as Tracy warned, rain started to pour, and the wind started to pick up even fucking more. As a result, the waves are getting really fucking rough to traverse. And to make matters worse for Nurse Joy, she was then distracted as she looks back away from the waves as she hears Ash and the gang calling her name as they had finally started to catch up. Their calls are quite literally drowned out though, as a huge wave hits them and knocks them off of their kayaks, leaving them stranded in the water. Thankfully, since they were able to distract Nurse Joy, obviously this wasn't the best for her, but she was able to see them fall off and advise them to bring out some of their water Pokemon to act as flotation devices and transportation devices. So, Ash and the gang do as they're told, with Ash bringing out his Squirtle, Tracy bringing out his Meryl, and Misty wanting to bring out her Staryu, but instead bringing out her Psyduck, which makes her trip miserable as Psyduck can't swim. After a little bit, though, Psyduck can't take it anymore and retreats to his Pokeball, allowing Misty to actually send Staryu out to finish the journey. The journey to a nearby island, which Nurse Joy had instructed them to follow her to. She led them to this island, as this was the island where the seal were located, and she still obviously needed to treat them. Anyways, when they all arrived on the island, they were filled with much relief. For one, they didn't have to be in the water anymore, and two, the storm had passed by the time they arrived. Yay, that's convenient. Ash and the gang then thanked Joy for all her help with getting them to the island, and apologized for almost unintentionally causing her to get distracted while kayaking, stating that that wasn't their intention, and she thankfully accepts the apology, and even allows them to rest for a little bit, seeing how tired they were after the journey there. As they rest, Team Rocket spies on them from their Magikarp sub, plotting to steal both Pikachu and Nurse Joy's Chansey. Why the Chansey though? It's not really that rare, but alright. They waste no time trying to do so, as Meowth reveals that he has a secret weapon to help them, and proceeds to press a button, which unleashes the secret weapon, a missile! Wow, such a secret weapon. You've totally never used a missile before. You just used one last episode, did you not? The missile explodes when it arrives on the beach, but it doesn't harm Ash and the gang. It merely traps them in a rope that it released. And that just makes this weapon even less original, as ropes you use even more than missiles. With Ash and the gang captured, Team Rocket then come up in their Magikarp sub and reveal themselves, and proceed to do their motto, revealing their plan of taking both Pikachu and Chansey. While Team Rocket are doing their motto, Nurse Joy tries her best to break out of the ropes, using the thought of the sixth seal needing her help as motivation, but she's not strong enough. Just then, in a Deus Ex Machina moment, the giant Magikarp from earlier shows up to save Nurse Joy, just like it did previously, and just like Nurse Joy had did to it, as it proceeds to attack the Magikarp sub. Unfortunately, despite being a Deus Ex Machina, its efforts were useless, as it was no match for the fucking hard-ass metal that was Team Rocket's sub, versus its flubbering body. Seeing her best friend hurt, combined with the fact that the seal was still in danger, and the fact that she was captured, makes the Nurse Joy practically break down in sadness. There was truly nothing that could be done now. Just kidding, because we have the true Deus Ex Machina moment of the episode, as the giant Magikarp proceeds to evolve, much to Team Rocket's shock and horror, into a Gyarados. Yeah! Utilizing its new powers, the Gyarados then hits Team Rocket with its tail, sending them blasting off. Let's go. They were dealt with relatively quickly this episode. Despite the Gyarados just saving their lives, Ash and the gang get nervous as the Gyarados then approaches it, as they feared that the Magikarp evolving could have wiped its memory or changed its attitude to the point where it didn't care about Nurse Joy anymore, and would therefore see her and Ash and the gang as targets as opposed to allies. They even got to the point of yelling out in fear as the Gyarados leaned in, implying that it was about to eat them. However, it merely leaned in, wanting a hug from Nurse Joy. All of these worries were completely unfounded. The Gyarados was just as kind as it was as a Magikarp and had retained all of its memories. After getting a pet and a hug from Nurse Joy, the Gyarados was more than happy to free Ash and the gang from the ropes, allowing them to accompany Nurse Joy to heal all of the sixth seal, which she manages to do. Yay! After healing the seal, Nurse Joy then returns to the Gyarados and begins petting it, with Tracy taking the opportunity to sketch a picture of Nurse Joy and the Gyarados. Hey, at least it wasn't just one of Nurse Joy this time. Ash and the gang then tell Nurse Joy that they were going to go continue on their journey, as Ash stated that although he really enjoyed helping Pokemon, he also still wanted to become a Pokemon Master, adding that his next step in that goal was winning the Orange League. Upon hearing this, Nurse Joy then reveals to Ash that the location of the next Orange League gym was on Naval Island, which was an island not far from where they currently were. Ash thanks her for the information, and excitedly begins his trek to Naval Island with his gang, riding on Lapras.